Welcome to Tactical Pontoon. Right now, we are going to look at a few tips, tricks, troubleshooting on installs for a variety of the Tactical Pontoon trigger systems. This is going to apply to from the Peacemaker all the way up to the Leonidas. So there's kind of a general overview, if you will, on your install. Okay, to start out with your Peacemaker drop-in systems, you will have no over travel adjustment. The only adjustment that you may possibly need to do would be the cruciform over here, the cruciform engagement adjustment, whether you need a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on what the trigger is doing. This video is going to be linked in my troubleshooting and install section on the website. There is a video on how to adjust this. So what might you need to adjust? Well, if your trigger is dragging or not breaking until the very end of the trigger pull or not breaking at all, you will need less adjustment. Also, watch that video. It will tell you how. If the trigger is breaking very quickly and it's breaking upon reset without you pulling the trigger again, you will need more engagement between this cruciform and the striker lug. It's in the video. Okay, that also applies to the Heisenberg trigger systems, the Leonidas trigger systems, all of the pretty much any trigger system adjustment of your cruciform. The next thing, if you are running into the possibility of the trigger, you pull the trigger, it breaks, and then when you release the trigger, it does not reset, you need to check. We're not going to be able to really see it on camera here, but inside of here, Generation 5 is a little bit different, and I have a video on that. Is this spring right here, this spring, this little loop right here on the trigger bar, it must be fully vertical. If it is leaning to the left, it is leaning to the right, you will get a temperamental reset. It may not reset whatsoever. So if you're having a reset issue, that is the first place you need to check. If it is Generation 5, I have a video on that. And basically you just need to make sure that the trigger bar is looped and hooked into the spring. So reset issues, that is the first place you need to look. Now, if you are having a very weak sounding reset, if you are having a trigger that is also having problems breaking, you need to look at your connector. It should have a gap between it and the trigger housing, the trigger block housing, about that much. This connector is a spring. It needs to push against the frame, and it will push against the trigger bar. If that does not have enough tension, you will have reset issues. Normally, it'll be a really weak sounding reset, or you may not hear the reset at all, or because it doesn't have enough tension, the trigger bar can actually push past this ledge on the connector where it is supposed to ride. It will push directly past it and the trigger won't activate it. This is another reason why it is very important to, when you are installing a trigger, to have a Glock armorer's plate, a half plate, if you will. These are available on the website, or if you need one quicker, and you have extra pieces, you can take one of the factory polymer ones and chop the bottom of it off, so therefore you can see inside to see what is actually going on, because that is going to be the best way to see if that trigger bar is passing right past that connector. Okay, so Glock armorer's plate is very important. Okay, the next thing that we'll talk about really quickly is on your trigger, again, like I said, with the tuning of the cruciform, if you have a trigger that is breaking either it's breaking heavy or it's dragging quite a bit before it breaks, which will of course make the trigger heavier than it is, you should look at that cruciform engagement. If you have too much, it's going to drag before it breaks, raising the weight of the trigger up. Trigger tuning is something that you should look at no matter what trigger you have, whether it's one of the high-end adjustable triggers, because in a way they're all adjustable with a little bit of tuning like that. Whether it's one of the high-end or one of the Peacemaker trigger systems, a little bit of cruciform tuning can go a long way. That is one of the reasons why just listing it on the website by the weight is a little bit hard for me to do, because having a cruciform that is out of adjustment, that has too much engagement, can bring that trigger weight way up. So if you have a very heavy trigger, that is one thing to check to make sure you don't have too much engagement. The other thing about that is make sure that the green badger snot grease that I send with these triggers is on there. You do need to make sure that your trigger is lubricated, whether it's badger snot or whether it's your preferred gun lube. Lubricate those triggers. Do not run them dry. Please do not run them dry. That is another thing that will raise the poundage of the trigger up and can ruin the trigger bar or the connector. I have a video on that, which will also be in the tips and tricks section of the website. All right, another thing. This is going to be talking about like the Heisenberg trigger systems, the adjustable trigger systems. Heisenberg, Leonidas, the competition system triggers that have an over travel stop. Now, you get this trigger in, okay, and the over travel stop is located right here in the rear of the trigger block housing. It uses an Allen key, a 1.5 millimeter Allen key to adjust that. Now I have a video on how to adjust. So the steps for doing this, if you get a Heisenberg trigger system, if you have a Heisenberg trigger system and it does not break, the first thing that you need to do is you need to go to the over travel stop and you need to adjust it all the way out so that it is not interfering with the trigger bar whatsoever. You can see the adjustable screw right there. Back that all the way back to where it is flat on the trigger block housing so that it is neutral. Okay? Then you will put the trigger back into the gun and you will verify function. If the trigger breaks, now you know that the over travel stop needed adjustment. When they ship from my shop, they're normally in a fairly neutral position, but with the variations in slides and frames and strikers and all of that sort of thing, my neutral position may still be engaged for you. Okay, so that would be the first thing. You will back that off. Then you will check function. Preferably, you will have a Glock armorer's plate there, and you can look at your cruciform to striker lug engagement to see, hey, maybe I need to adjust it a little bit, do a little bit of tuning. Okay, so you've backed that all the way out. The trigger still does not break. Well, now you know you need to do a cruciform adjustment. Once you've done the cruciform adjustment and you've used your Glock armorer's plate to verify that everything is good, as the video shows, you will then put it back together, drop the trigger back in place, and now you can tune the over travel stop adjustment. That over travel stop is going to keep the trigger from moving after the break, and because you're not moving far after the break, your reset is even quicker than it normally would be. Okay, so that is the tip, the tricks, the install parameters for pretty much your Peacemakers to your Heisenberg competition system. Those are the common things that you're going to see. The Leonidas system does have a few extra little bits, but that's really goes into another video. Overall, aside from its pre-travel adjustment that it has, which you shouldn't need to mess with too much, but it can happen. That is going to cover the Leonidas install issues that you might have, as well as your Peacemaker and Heisenberg. So that's the way you go about it. If you have a Heisenberg and it's not breaking, what you need to do is first start with your over travel stop, then verify your cruciform adjustment. Once you've adjusted your cruciform, then you can go back to your over travel stop and get it adjusted. If this is a Peacemaker, your Peacemaker adjustment is just this cruciform adjustment. Having a Glock armorer's plate, a tactical pontoon Glock armorer's plate, just because they're fancy, is a very, very valuable thing for you to have. It really is key to getting everything tuned and adjusted just right. Or it's also key for verifying different operations of your trigger while the gun is together. Now, before I sign off here, I do want to say one last thing. When you are verifying operation of this trigger, both your brake, your adjustment of your cruciform, and even your over travel stop, have a magazine with a snap cap installed. Because what that is going to do, it is going to raise your slide up into full operational condition. Glocks have a loose fit. You can grab a Glock, you can shake a Glock, and you can see that that slide is going to move a little bit up and down. Well, with the magazine with a snap cap installed, that is going to push that slide up and put it in, and we're talking 20 thousandths of an inch. It's not very much, but it does make a difference, and you would be surprised what this can actually change and how your trigger is going to feel. All right, so that is my guide, quick overview and guide for troubleshooting, installation, and adjusting of a tactical pontoon trigger system. All right, if you have any other questions, you know how to reach me. We will be doing, obviously, more videos on different aspects of this, and there are more in-depth videos for the adjustment of the cruciform and the over travel stop on the website, as well as here on YouTube. I believe that's it. As always, is your trigger breaking clean? If it's not, I can help you get that taken care of, whether it's a new trigger system or just tuning what you already have. I'd be glad to help. We'll catch you next time on Tactical Pontoon.